Hi guys. Um, Let me know if you can hear me well. This is Maya. I am a curator of the My Bookgram account. If you haven't met me before, hi, nice to meet you. And I'm going to invite Tao Wong right now. We're going to talk about his book, A Thousand Lee series. It's actually a series, not just one book, which is really exciting. And we'll talk more than about one book. So stay tuned. Okay, I just hi everyone. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Not bad. Just give me a second. Let me flip this. There you go.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing good. How you doing? Very exciting.
Yes, it is. And it was a thousandly the first step, Ibiti.
It was what?
Oh, someone asked what the book was that you
Oh,
mentioned, and
yes. I'm gonna show this is the book. It's the Thousand Lee series. It's actually a series. I believe right now it's 8 books, and you're gonna have the ninth. And these are wuxia, xianxia genre. These are
yeah,
my These are my favorite wuxia xianxia genre series. Like literally my favorite. So
thank you so much.
um, the first question, I know you write more than wuxia xianxia. I know you do sci-fi. So I want to ask you, just briefly tell us which genres you write and why do you write?
Okay. Well, I write in mostly sci-fi and fantasy, though I do write in a bunch of other more contemporary work, mostly in short stories, but mostly the majority of my novels, longer works, are in sci-fi and fantasy. I have quite a few works in the lit RPG genre. So that's the ones where sort of like Sword Art Online, or The King's Avatar is a good example of work that's like lit RPG where the video game systems are part of the story. And then a lot of progression fantasy works fall, Cultivation, Sensia, lit RPG all kind of fall under progression fantasy as well. So those are the types of things that I generally write. Um, for me, writing's it's just telling stories, and I've been telling myself stories for ages since I was, a little kid, um, and this is just a way of me continuing to do it, except on a more public basis.
I'm glad you're writing. And you can share stories with us. I'm really glad about it. Also, can you briefly talk about wuxia, xianxia genres? And someone asked me to ask a question about your perspective on silk punk.
Yep.
And I haven't read your sci-fi yet, so I cannot tell if your sci-fi you can say it's silk punk or just something else. If you can touch on that, would be great.
Sure. So, wuxia is basically, it translates as martial heroes, and it's got a very long history in Chinese literature. What they call the news wuxia works started around the 1960s or so, give or take, in Hong Kong, with writers like Jin Yong and Gu Rong and the likes, who really wrote a lot of and created much of the or established a lot of the tropes that we see, the jianghu, the uh, battle between honor and loyalty and obedience, a lot of familial concepts and structures, almost a wandering hero aspect that you see in a lot of wuxia heroes and a lot of stories, that comes into play. So if you watch a lot of movies, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is probably the most famous wuxia movie ever. But Jet Li's Hero, is another one. A lot of Jet Li works, at least the period pieces, are sort of are either wuxia directly, like the Feng Sayok works, or are wuxia adjacent, where they're kind of closer to the 19th century kind of thing. So that's wuxia. Xianxia is a similar, a lot of the Sanxia works are similar-ish to wuxia works, at least the more modern ones. But I mean, the older Xianxia work is the Journey to the West, right? If you look at Xianxia, it just translates as immortal heroes. So it works as, it talks about any kinds when you add in gods and spirits and everything like that, while dealing with the heroic elements and everything. That's kind of Xianxia. And then within that, there's also more specific defined genres. A lot of these definitions, though, are very recent, within the last 120 years or so, where we've really started trying to define these subgenres. Old Chinese literature didn't really bother with that. They just wrote, it's just literature, So you'd have a normal, the Detective D stories are a good example. You'd have a normal, mystery happening. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, sometimes you'd have a fox spirit in there. And it didn't really matter because it was just something that happened, Everyone believed in these things and all. And so there wasn't this differentiation between, oh, this is supernatural and fantasy, and this isn't. It just was part of life, Occasionally, your mystery involves a fox spirit dealing with things, or a ghost coming along. And so that's one of the things I want to, when we talk about genres, it becomes tricky, because all these genres are something that we're imposing backwards onto things, and genres are the borders between them kind of move around. Silk punk, I've not read a huge amount of silk punk. As I understand it, it's similar to steampunk in the sense that it takes an aesthetic and the 18th, 19th century aesthetic with diesel and steam and everything, but moves it over to the Orient. I've only read a few. I'm trying to remember the one. It's not Gunpowder Mage, I think. Jeannie Lin does a silk punk series that I've read that I really enjoyed. It's not a subgenre that I've delved deeply into as yet, so I can't really comment too much about it. Beyond
maybe one day, maybe one day it will be interesting to explore it.
It is. It's an interesting time period for sure. I mean, the 18th, 19th century, especially in China. I know people like R.F. Kuang and the Poppy Wars could almost be considered, well, kind of, I guess it's a little too late because it's more in the World War II. But, people, that opium period, the Opium War period and the Century of Shame, or Centuries of Shame, depending on how you look at it, is an interesting, very combative period in China's history. I only know a little bit about that side of history. I mean, Chinese history is it's so vast. There's no way for me to know about it.
Well, I can talk about it forever. It is very vast, and it's very interesting. So going back to 1,000 Li series, just want to show everyone, it's just book one of the series. How did you decide to write about Wu Yin character, and how did you come up with this series?
Okay. So I've been reading a number of Chinese web novels, a lot of Xianxia works, a lot of cultivation works, prior to me actually writing 1,000 Li. And I grew up with, old school wuxia works, things from Jin Yong, a lot of the Jet Li movies, a lot of some of the more modern works by Donnie Yen And
Argentinian
one,
world.
even Jackie Chan did a bunch of more wuxia stuff. And the thing that I really found strange is that because the writers for a lot of these Chinese web novels they come from modern China, right? Whereas a lot of stuff that I used to read came from, old Hong Kong, right? 1960s, 1980s Hong Kong, and so the sensibilities and how they approached the world, how they approached the thematic elements about family, about the use of power, was very different. And I kind of missed that. I looked at it and went, well, this isn't really the wuxia that I know. It isn't, the stuff, the xianxia, the concepts, and, all of the themes of family and loyalty, all of those things, they were missing. And so what I wanted to do was write a story that used some of the modern sensibilities of, cultivation and all the different stages, and the ascension to immortality, but bringing it back to what I would consider more familiar Chinese culture for me. So I was kind of mixing that. On top of that, I wanted to write A Thousand Li in a way that was easy for people to get into, because not everyone will, have read as much, old school works. They won't have read wuxia stuff, So a lot of these concepts, I wanted to be able to introduce them kind of gradually throughout the work.
Yeah, so one of the things I really like about your books, and I noticed that they provide, this particular series, they provide a lot of details that other wuxia, xinxia, I'm not sure to pronounce correctly, genres don't provide, about cultivation, about dantian, and how you grow the energy and how it all works. That was one of my questions, but you responded. So yeah, so yours has so many details, and what I've noticed when I read your series, I can actually better understand other books, because and maybe because I haven't grown up, with this kind of information. So when I read you, you would say like, okay, so this is how it works, and then I'll read someone else just mention it a little bit, and I'll be like, oh, that's how actually it works. That's how they fly to the sky, or that's how the sword can just fly on its own and fight without even then touching, because the energy they project chi.
Yeah.
So that helps. That helps a lot. So I like it a lot, and I did notice that it was really detailed. So it was my question, if you purposefully made it detailed.
I did. I'm a little bit of a geek. I love the world building aspects. So coming up with explanations, coming up with the understanding of why certain things work in certain ways, so taking things that I know as well, or explanations that exist in the real world. I borrow somewhat heavily from existing qigong practices, from Chinese medicine, like all the things.
Sorry, I thought.
No worries.
Sorry about it. Okay, so I noticed, maybe I'm mistaken, but I noticed you also have a blend of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Is it correct?
Yeah.
And I also practice Tai Chi. I'm not like proficient,
yep.
But I also noticed that when during the classes we talk about Daitian and energy moving, I noticed that in your books you have very similar aspects of how everything is working. And that's why I assume that you also included there something from Taoism, maybe a little bit of Tai Chi, I'm not sure. And Confucianism,
yep.
Maybe a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, so I practice Tai Chi a little bit. I'm not, as like you, I'm not at all very good, but I have, I've done a little bit of it here. I've done a little bit of Qigong as well. So as I said, I use that and try to blend some of that. I try to blend in some of my martial arts practices into the fight scenes and stuff like that. But Confucianism and Taoism, I mean, Confucianism is so ingrained into traditional Chinese culture. Same with Buddhism, that a lot of times you don't, it takes a little bit of time to figure out where, you know, the aspects that have kind of blended in already and kind of highlighted if you don't really look at it. And the funny thing is, legalism is a huge chunk of our culture, which we almost ascribe to Confucianism, but it really isn't. we just kind of shorthand it and go, hey, it's Confucianism. No, actually, it's more legalism if you actually read the details about legalism, which is something that, you know, Shi Huangdi really pushed compared to Confucianism, and that was ascended during his time. But so there are aspects of that, you know, the piety to family, to having the bureaucracy and everything is, and understanding and being respectful of the people above you. All of that is very Confucius and part of Chinese culture, just because it's kind of blended in. I do have a much heavier thread of Taoism inside my work than most, because I am a practicing Taoist to some extent. I try. I'm not very good, again. But, you know, and it's something that I've been fascinated with. So I read, you know, about Taoist books and whatnot, and I try to bring little bits and pieces of that into the book so that it's something that people can, you know, understand, I guess, of the concepts as they go along.
Right. Yeah. When I started in your first book, I wondered right away if you practice Tai Chi, and I think I even looked up your biography, and I think it mentioned somewhere you practice Tai Chi. I think there is maybe on Amazon, not sure. And I was like, oh yeah, so that's it. I could tell somehow based on the. I think it's great actually that you incorporate all these pieces, and you can learn a lot. One thing I forgot to ask you briefly to talk about, what is the main theme of the Thousand Li series for those who haven't read this series yet?
I mean, the main plot point is about Wu Ying, the Lung Wu Ying, which is the hero, the protagonist, and his journey to immortality. He starts out as a farmer, and his goal is to become a immortal creature, an immortal being, because in this world, it's possible to cultivate and become an immortal if you gain enough strength and enlightenment. So to do that, a lot of what he has to do is clear energy, you know, gain power, but also seek out enlightenment. And the aspect of enlightenment for each individual inside the story will differ depending on their own personalities, their own experiences as they go through. And so that's basically the entire arc of the series, his 12-book arc, from him starting out to, you know, hopefully his final enlightenment and stepping into the heavenly realms. Thematically, I joke that the Thousand Li is my exploration of Taoism on a grand scale as well as an individual. A lot of Taoist concepts are very hard to implement and to deal with in a secular world. You know, you have to eat. You have to deal with people. You have to, you know, we all hate and get angry and love and judge and, you know, grasp for knowledge. And how do you deal with that? You know, there's different characters who tackle the idea of enlightenment and what they need to do differently. And so that's my kind of focus for the book, I guess. It's looking at how we can live in many ways.
Somebody asked me to show the cover again. Here's the cover. It's also in my feed, guys. So if you go in my feed, or if you go to Tao Wong's page, and I'll post another story. But this is the cover. This is the first book, and here is the second book. It looks like this. I just show a couple books because I really also like the covers. I think it's a beautiful design. I'll just show three for now.
Yeah.
And here's the third one. So yeah, every book has a different design, and I like the color, everything. So yes, but you can find them under 1,000 Lee, so it's easy to find it on Amazon, for example.
Yeah,
So this is
yeah.
how the
I
cover is.
I have been so lucky with my artists. It's beautiful. The covers have been beautiful, and he's been really been very good at blending, more Western styles with a bit more of a Chinese brush painting. So it looks really well, I
Yes,
found.
yes, I was going to ask about the artist because every one is so individual, and I think it reflects kind of the book itself. Like when you see the first one, the beginning of his journey, and then as it progresses, each book cover is different. So I really like that aspect.
Yeah, yeah. We've been so Filippo is such a great artist. So we work with him. We kind of give him a very I don't he's that's the thing I love about great artists. You don't need to give them, detailed,
Right.
specific things. Give them
Mhm.
a rough idea of what you want and what you need, and they'll come back with some sketches, and then you'll work with them before they produce it. And whatever they come out with good artists, it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah, that's true. And they just can feel if they, especially if they read your work, and I'm sure they do. Artists usually can feel what they need to draw. And I saw somebody mention Patreon. Your Patreon. I know you also publish there additional chapters,
Yep.
and oh yeah, somebody mentioned that you have an amazing Patreon, which you can get additional stories.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to check it, yes, that will be also interesting. So. What, well, I know you mentioned that you've read a lot of different old style, wuxia, like 60s, 70s, xia genres. What shaped you, what experience shaped you as a writer overall?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I haven't had to. Um, I think it's mostly reading. Like I've read so many different books, and I read and write in many ways across genres. Because
Mhm.
I've read everything from romance novels to crime thrillers and everything. Um, some of my biggest influences as writing, obviously Jin Yong and his work. A lot of Louis McMaster Bouchot and her vocal signal series, as well as her um, The Curse of Charlion. I can't remember the series name, but it's the first book is The Curse of Charlion, and then the second book is Paladin of Souls. She's just an amazing writer with an amazing ability to find the right word and craft sentences that just blows you away. Terry Pratchett and his ability to talk about social issues in a way that is hilarious, um, but also makes you think. I can't. I wish I could write humor like he does, but we all have our own skills. So reading and writing, reading all of these different writers over, you know, the few decades, the many decades that I've been alive. I think that's the biggest influence for me as a writer. And then after that, mostly just writing. Um, I find that letting myself just write and keep writing helped me find my voice, helped me find the things that I really enjoyed writing about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I like this about reading, that it shapes you as a writer. Yeah, that's true. I'm sure that writers, I've read that writers have to read a lot. It's like, I believe one writer said that he reads every day. It's part of his job as being a writer is to read. I'm not a writer, I'm a reader, but I like to read a lot. But that's what I've heard some writers was saying, that it's really important, and they read like every single day different books. Um, what are you currently reading? What book?
I'm reading Fonda Lee's Jade City. I know that came out a while ago, but I only just got around to reading that. So that's my current book on my phone. I read both on my phone as well as physical books. I pick up a lot of physical books and try to read those too. And my physical book, I am working through Kindred by Olivia E. Butler. So that one's a little more serious. So it's a little slower going through that one. But Fonnelly's Jade City is amazing. I'm incredibly impressed with the world building that she's done in there. Everything from the way that she uses specific sayings to the world building that she's done. I'm kind of quietly taking notes on things that I can improve on.
Talking about shaping you as a writer, right? Yeah, this is. I am going to check into it. I haven't read this books. That's interesting. Um, so I know that some people who joined us, or a person, or a couple of people, they want to be writers. What would be your recommendation for a beginner, a writer who just begins?
Right. I mean, if you want to be a writer, you need to write. I mean, that's the basic stats. But one of the things that a lot of us fail at is we write and then we never finish what we write. And that's tricky. What you end up doing is you start training yourself never to finish. And I had that same problem for a long time. Outside of shorts, I would have really hard trouble finishing a novel. So training yourself to finish the novel, because finishing a novel teaches you how to do the endings, which a lot of writers, especially beginner writers, struggle with. And you're not going to get better at that until you do it. That's no other way around it. I personally like writing short stories. I think writing short stories and getting feedback on short stories will improve your writing skills as an overall individual craft level. However, the skill set in writing a short story and writing a novel is very different. You know, a novel is 40, 60, 200,000 words. Learning to write that long is very different from writing, you know, just 4,000 to 6,000 words, 2,000 words, whatever that short story is. So short stories do have a place, but not everyone's going to be able to do them. And if you can't, don't worry about it, but do finish what you start.
Okay, so is it easier to write ending for stories, or is it more difficult to write ending for a large novel than for the short story, or it doesn't matter?
They're different skill sets. They're different ways. The thing about short stories is that you are constrained. You have to come up with an idea or a scenario that you can finish off in 4,000 to 6,000 words, right? Maybe. I mean, sometimes some short story calls are for like 2,000 words. So you really have to be very careful about what you do. So it'll teach you to cancel out, words that you don't need, to go and tighten up your language to have a really good plot. But because you're writing so short, your ideas aren't expansive enough, or at least you don't train yourself to look at the ideas that are expansive enough to sustain a whole novel. The other aspect of writing a novel is that there's the soggy middle, or the boggy middle, as they call it, the part where, and if it's like a 60,000 word novel, is between about 20 to about 40, 45, 50,000 words in, and you're just you hate everything you write. You hate, what you've written. You think that's the worst thing ever, and you want to turn around and you want to edit it all because the fun, when you start, you're super excited, generally speaking. This isn't true for everyone. If this isn't true for you as a writer, that's fine. All of us are different, but this is majority true from what I've talked to. Everyone's excited in the beginning. It's when that initial excitement goes away and you hit that middle. Teaching yourself to push through the discipline required is very different from writing a short story. I can go through a short story and I'll be super excited and I'll never really have that, middle part because it's 4,000 words or 2,000 words, so I'm super excited all the way through. With a 60,000 word book or a 100,000 word book, there's a large chunk of it where you're just like, I have to put down the words. I know what I need to write. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to write because that's my job, or this is what I need to do to get to the end. And the end is going to be cool.
Cool. Interesting. This is so interesting to get some insights into writing process. It's very, very cool. I saw someone mention about your Patreon again, that you also give tips on Patreon for writers, I guess. I don't know, somebody mentioned that. So guys, if you're interested to learn more about Tao's work, you can join his Patreon. And I don't want to show again his book. I just really love it, so I'll keep showing it. I wanted to quickly go. I know I don't know how much time more you have, but I have a couple more questions. One is, you mentioned that the wuxia, senxia genres changes over time, and they're not the same now as they used to be. What about the same type of movies or TV series? I have been watching those. I have been watching, of course, Crouching Tiger, but I have been watching Chinese costume dramas, wuxia, senxia style for quite a long, and I have been noticing changes in how, like, even yesterday, I'm not going to say the name of the drama, I started watching a new drama which is really popular, and I've noticed that it's so different from like family values, not the same how they portrayed in other dramas. It's so much more modern, and I was like, no, it's still good drama, but it's so different from other dramas I get used to. So I wanted to see if you notice those changes in wuxia, senxia genres when it comes to TV series and movies. It's like
I have to admit, sorry.
No,
I was going to say, I don't watch as much the Chinese TV series as I probably should. I don't have the time. And I mean, you probably realize, a Chinese TV series is like 40, most of them are like 20 to 40 episodes long. And I'm like, oh God, that's 40 hours of my day, I barely have time to keep up with other stuff. So I actually start a lot and I won't finish, which is kind of sad. But I do know that there's a lot of mixture. I know, like, what's his name? Jin Yong's Return of the Condor Heroes is actually getting reshot again. It's like Legend of the Condor Heroes has been shot 4 or 5 times. I think Return has only had 3. I might be undercounting the number of times. So, those stories, they constantly get redone. And there's always different depictions of it. There is a new trend of work, the Danmei stuff, which Untamed is part of it, that came up in China. So that's a new trend, and that one we didn't see as much. Actually, I don't remember seeing very much of it as a kid, but I also grew up in Malaysia, so censorship about stuff like that was a lot more strict. So if it was coming through, if it was being shown, it wasn't coming over to us. But I don't remember seeing stuff like the Danmei stuff as heavily, for sure, during when I was a kid. I think, but there's always been more. I've seen a lot of morally gray shows, where, and I think a lot, if anything, a lot of the movies and TV shows I've seen in Chinese works have always been a little bit more morally gray. You know, one of the jokes that me and my wife have is that in the Chinese drama, everybody dies at the end. It's not true anymore. But, you know, for a time in the 1990s, a good show, a Chinese movie or Chinese drama, a lot of the heroes and the people there were dead.
Yeah, now it's usually a good ending. Like everybody happy, get married, and usually it's yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Okay, it's interesting. I have some lightning questions for you, so you can just give quick responses. You already told me what's your current read. What's your favorite place to read?
In bed.
Okay. Okay. Favorite place to write?
Oh, I actually do a lot of writing in cafes because it gets me out of the house. Otherwise, I'll be sitting at home and pecking away, and it gets boring. So I find going to cafes helps a lot.
I like to go read in cafes. I like with a cup of coffee. I find it really relaxing. Why do you think reading is important? Overall, not just for you, like overall for people.
Yeah, overall, with the right stories, it opens up your mind to different worlds, different viewpoints, different concepts, really. A lot of things that I think about these days come from books. I was first introduced to the ideas via books and via the things that I've read. So, you know, yeah.
I agree with that. Do you like to cook?
Yes, I'm a huge. My latest novella that came out last month, The Nameless Restaurant.
I thought the restaurant, the Nameless Restaurant. I was very glad when I wrote it, and I was like, this is such a good idea to write about the restaurant. And I thought I'll ask you this question because I thought you liked to cook because you wrote that book. What is your favorite dish to cook?
Sorry, my favorite what?
What is your favorite dish to cook?
Malaysian curry. That's probably the one that I cook the most, which is Malaysian chicken curry.
Okay. What's your hobby besides, well, writing is your work. What's your hobby?
I don't have much of a.
You don't have.
Sorry. I don't have a lot of free time these days, but I probably martial arts would be the thing that I do for fun the most, outside of reading and writing, which is, you know, it's work and hobby. But
right. No, I think it is a hobby. Like I consider Tai Chi to be. You can say it's a hobby. Do you practice a long style or a short style Tai Chi?
I haven't done Tai Chi in a bit. The last one I did was the Chen style. Or the old Cannon Fist was the one that I was working on the last time I was doing it. These days, right now, I am in a Krav Maga studio. I travel a lot, so every time I travel to a new city, I end up having to find a new teacher. So it's always, you know, I don't get very good at anything, but I learn a little bit of pieces of everything.
Right, you can still do it by yourself. I often do it by myself.
I do. Yeah, occasionally I'll go downstairs and go through my forms.
And the last one, what's your favorite time period in history?
Oof. Oh God, I can't. That's a tough one.
I knew this is a question after for the last one.
Oh.
Anything in the world, just like anything. 1960s, I don't know.
My favorite time period.
Even if you didn't live those times, anything.
I don't know. I mean, I've read a lot of. I've gone through phases. I have a lot of books on the Byzantine Empire right now. That's what I've spent some time reading. I spent a bunch of time reading about World War II because everyone does. I have a whole bunch of time that I kind of read a whole bunch about Chinese history overall, very basic set. And I started kind of, I think Tang Dynasty is kind of, I'm trying to learn a little bit more about that time period because I think I want to try to set something a little bit more. With A Thousand Lee, I just borrowed historical aspects from all over because I'm just not going to try to go and it's not a historical book. I'm not I'm not dealing with that. But I would like to go and play around with a little bit more historically accurate work. So that's something I'm a big I read history for fun quite often, historical books. So that's a weird question for me because I've read a lot about Romans, the Roman Empire, England. Yeah, sorry, can't answer.
It's a really hard question. It's hard to probably pick up. So after book 9, are you planning to continue series or okay, good.
Yeah, it's the book. The series ends 12 books in, so there's I have an arc that finishes at 12 books. At the end of 12 books, the A Thousand Lee series is ended. I still have ideas within the overall universe, but the series itself ends because there's a specific endpoint that kind of is a good place to end, to stop.
So after that, you still wanted to continue to write in that kind of genre?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. For sure.
Just want to make sure. I wanted to show everybody in the cover. Yeah, because I every time I didn't know it's going to be 12 books, but every time I see a new book, I always think, I hope it's not the last one. And then when I see the next one you announce, usually I'm like, oh, good. So I wanted to ask you this question. So I'm glad that still there is like three more books at least.
Yeah.
So this I want to show everyone again. So this is the first book of Thousand Lee series. I highly recommend to read this book if you didn't read this yet. Even if you didn't try reading wuxia and xia genres, you like fantasy. That's a good book. These are good series. So I want to tell you thank you for talking to me.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, it was a pleasure. I was really glad to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
And I want to mention when your 9th book come out, and if you wanna talk about it in September, have another live, I would be honored. It would be really good. I would.
For sure. Yeah, shouldn't be a problem. We'll figure out some time. All right. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.